The sieve of Eratosthenes is very useful to determine all primes in the range 2 to a given number n. But suppose now that we have to determine just one number m, if it's a prime or not, sieve of Eratosthenes is not going to be that useful, because to use sieve of Eratosthenes we have to find all the primes in the range 2 to m, then only we will be able to say if m is a prime or not. So we have to go back to our old technique of trying divisions with various numbers less than m to find out if m is a prime or not. Initially, we said that to determine if m is a prime or not, we have to perform divisions from 2 to m minus 1. After that, we found that going from 2 to m minus 1 is not actually necessary. It is enough to go from 2 to n by 2. So that means we don't have to go up to m minus 1, but instead of that, we can go up to m by 2. And if you are able to find a factor in that range, we will conclude that the given number m is a prime. If you are able to find a factor, we will conclude that this is not a prime. If you are not able to find any divisor in the range 2 to m by 2, we will conclude that this m is actually a prime. That's a technique that we can actually use to tell exactly if m is a prime or not. But now the question is that we have now kept a bound for the number of bound for a device of m. What is that bound? The lower bound is going to be 2 and the upper bound is going to be m by 2. Now the question is, can we reduce the bound from m by 2 to something lower? That means, can we say that we don't have to try division from 2 to m by 2, but it is enough to try division from 2 to some other number which is less than m by 2 to determine if m is a prime or not. So our next aim is to find out another upper bound for divisors to determine if m is a prime or not. To recall what we have done so far, to determine if m greater than 2 is a prime or not, so we have initially suggested method 1, which is checking if some number in the range 2 to m minus 1 is a factor of m or not. So if you are trying to divide m with 2, then with 3, then up to m minus 1, it may take up to m minus 2 divisions to completely determine if m is a prime or not. In the next method, we slightly modified method 1, making it a little bit more efficient in the sense that instead of taking m minus 2 divisions, according to the second method, we need to take only m by 2 minus 1 divisions. And of course, if m by 2 is not an integer, we have to take the integer part of m by 2. So we need to check, we need to try to divide m using integers 2 up to m by 2 or integer part of m by 2, and if you get one factor in this particular range, then we will confirm that m is not a prime. If we are not getting any factor in the range 2 to m by 2, we will confirm that it is a prime. So next we are going to try to improve this m by 2 and trying to perform divisions something less than m by 2. That is what our next aim is. We are going to start with some observations. Suppose that we consider all divisors of m and we name them as A1, A2, A3, etc., AK, etc., AR. Suppose all divisors of m are the integers A1, A2, etc., AK, etc., some AR. And since we are interested in determining if m is a prime or not, we are not probably interested in the factors like 1 and m itself. So not equal to 1, not equal to m. These are the factors that we are considering. So A1 is not equal to 1, A2 is not equal to 1, etc. AR is not equal to 1, and none of these are equal to m. Therefore, A1 is minimum going to be equal to 2. If the set is empty, that means that m has no divisors in the range 2 to m minus 1, and therefore we can actually finish. So if A1 is a factor, if A1 divides m, then we know that there exists B1 another integer. Of course, we can assume m to be positive. Therefore, we can assume a1 and b1 also to be positive because we are not actually interested in the negative divisor. So we assume that b1 is a positive integer. b1 belongs to n such that what happens? a1 into b1 equal to yeah. So if a1 is a divisor, okay, we will again make one more assumption. AIs are in increasing order. That means that A1 is the smallest divisor, A2 is the next bigger one, A3, etc. up to AR is the largest divisor. Of course, we are not considering M to be a divisor in this set because M we are not interested. So A1, B1 equal to M. Since A1 is the smallest, B1 is going to be probably much bigger. Okay. Anyway, suppose that the next one is A2, B2 equal to M. Remember that we are not assuming A1, A2, etc. anything to be prime or anything like that. They are just divisors. So keep on going like this. We will get AK, BK. Remember that A1s are increasing. So AIs are increasing. A1 that is less than A2, less than A3, less than etc., less than AK, less than AK plus 1, etc., less than AR. This is the assumption we have. Therefore, naturally, since A1s are decreasing, so that the equation AI BI to be equal to 1, BIs must be increasing. So B1 greater than B2. Oh, sorry, BIs are decreasing. AIs are increasing, therefore BIs must be decreasing. Greater than etc. greater than bk greater than bk plus 1 and br. Now, there is actually a situation when AI is actually become greater than or equal to bi. For example, we will see one example here. Suppose that we want to see the factorizations of 100. So if we start with what are the AIs then? AIs are going to be, if we start with 100, if we are using the number 100, then AIs are uh, 2, 4, 5, 10, 20, 25, 50, and that's true. These are the AIs. So now, what about the corresponding BIs? BIs corresponding to 2, we have 50, corresponding to 4, we have 25, 5, we have 20, 10, we have 10 itself, 20 we have corresponding 20 we have 5, 25 we have 4, 50 we have 2. So we can here see that AIs are increasing and AIs are increasing and BIs are decreasing. Therefore, at one stage, what happens is 250 A1 B1, 425 A2 B2, 520 A3 B3. Even now, AI is less than BI. 1010. Now A has become equal to BI. After that, A is becoming large and BIs are becoming smaller than AI. So there is a stage when AI is less than or equal to AK is less than or equal to BK, and afterwards AK plus 1, BK plus 1 equal to M, but AK plus 1 is greater than bk plus 1. There is a stage when the sizes of AI and bi initially which were having the relation that AI is less than or equal to bi, there is a stage where AI becomes actually greater than bi. So we are going to target these two equations. So what happens here? Now AK plus 1 is greater than BK plus 1. But just see that we have considered all the factors here. We have considered all the factors A1, A2, etc. up to AK plus 1, etc. up to AR. Now we are getting AK plus 1 to be greater than AK plus 1 to be greater than BK plus 1. But if AK plus 1 is greater than BK plus 1, then BK plus 1 implies that BK plus 1, that is a factor less than AK plus 1. BK plus 1 is less than AK plus 1. Therefore, BK plus 1 must be one of A1, A2, etc. up to AK. So that's clear, right? Because BK plus 1 is a factor, BK plus 1 is less than AK plus 1, but therefore bk plus 1 must be less than or equal to ak. We have taken all factors in the increasing order of magnitude. Therefore, a1, a2, a3, etc. up to ak. We have considered all factors from 2 up to ak, and we are getting another factor bk plus 1, and we are that is not equal to ak plus 1. That is less than ak plus 1. Therefore, it must be one of the factors that came previously. If you see here, 2 5 we have taken 2 5, sorry, 250, 425, 520, 10 10. Now ak less than or equal to bk is satisfied. Next is 25. So ak plus 1 is greater than bk plus 1, but this 5 is already taken here as a3. So exactly like that, pk plus 1 we have already considered as a factor. So what happens now is bk plus 1, bk plus 2, etc. all will be already, all must have already appeared in uh, a1, a2, etc. up to ak. Therefore, the factorizations from this stage onwards, from here onwards, we don't have to actually consider it, because these factorizations must have already appeared previously. We will see using an example. So consider the factorization of 100. So starting with the least one, AI, 2 into 50. Next is 4 into 25. Next is 5 into 20. Next we have 10 into 10. These are all AIs, these are all BIs. Now 20 into 5. Just see here that reversal happens. This is AK, AK. This is AK plus 1, BK plus 1, and BK plus 1 is 5. This is 20, and BK plus 1 has already appeared here in this. This is our BK plus 1. So 5 into 20 we have already taken. Therefore, there is no need of checking factorizations from here onwards, and we can stop at this stage. Now we are coming back. So I hope that you understood what exactly we mean. So there is a stage when AK actually becomes less than or equal to PK, and in the next step, AK plus 1 becomes greater than or greater than, strictly greater than PK plus 1. So what we are saying is we don't have to consider the factorizations from AK plus 1, BK plus AK plus 1 to PK plus 1 onwards. We need to just go up to AK, BK when uh, at which stage this AKs will exceed, or AIs will exceed BIs. So we need not go beyond that stage. So what are the AIs? Therefore, we have to check for getting a factorization of this M. So A1 we have to take, A2 we have to take, etc. AK we have to take. These are the only devices to consider. Only devices to consider to determine if M is a prime. See, if we are getting one of these A1, A2, etc. up to AK to be a factor, then definitely M is not going to be a prime. See, can we suggest some bound for this AK? That is the next question. So, according to our expression, we have AK, BK equal to M, wherein this is a positive integer. AK, BK equal to M, and what is the property of, what is the relation between AK and BK? AK is strictly less than or equal to BK. So we don't have to consider AK plus 1 onwards. Therefore, AK is less than or equal to BK. Therefore, M equal to AK BK, that is greater than or equal to AK square. Therefore, AK is less than or equal to root M. So this is the crucial observation that we can make from this. That means if we have to look for a factorization of M, we need to consider only those factors of M starting from the lowest one. We need to go only up to square root of M to find a factorization of M. If at all M has some factors, one factor at least must be lying in the range, because we haven't considered BIs. What we have seen here is that BIs also would have we would have considered previously. So to determine the factorization of m, we need to just check the divisors in the range 2 to root m. So the conclusion we are making is the following. To determine if m has a factor in range 2 to a minus 1, it is enough to check the divisors of m in the range 2 to square root of m. In fact, once we get the idea that we need to check the divisors only in the range 2 to square root of m, it is actually very easy to now verify once again using some other argument. So suppose that m has a factorization of the form ab. So if m has a factorization of the form ab, at least one of the factors we have just now seen that the factor ak is going to be less than or equal to root m. The claim is the following: at least one of a or b must be less than or equal to root m. Therefore, to factorize m in the form ab, we need to just verify numbers below square root of 1. On the other hand, suppose this is not true. Suppose this is not true. So what is the meaning of that? That is, there exists a factorization of m equal to ab with both a and b greater than root m. A, b both greater than root m. But if a and b are both greater than root m, what happens is a greater than root m, b greater than root m, m is equal to ab, but a is greater than root m, b is greater than root m. This means that m greater than m. This is a contradiction. This is not going to be possible. This is a contradiction. This is not true, and therefore our assumption must be wrong. And therefore, if we are going to write m is equal to ab, then at least one of a or b must be less than or equal to root m. Therefore, if we are trying to find out a divisor of m, definitely one such divisor must be appearing well before root m. So it can be maximum root m. So to check if a given number m is a prime or not, we need to only see if it has some divisor in the range 2 to m. Now we have already seen that to determine if a number is a prime or not, we don't have to check all the divisors, but we need to only check its prime divisors. So the final conclusion we have is the following. So the method 3, which is much better from B, we are making the following claim, or we have already verified, therefore it's not just a claim, it's a statement that we can make. To check if M is a prime, see if M has a prime divisor in the range 2, etc. square root alpha. So this is actually a much lower number compared to the previous one. For example, suppose that we are considering 100 as the number, m is equal to 100. So in the previous technique, we have to take 2, 3, etc. 250. So 50 minus 1, so 49 divisions we have to perform. So in this case, what happens is that we need to go only up to square root of 1, which is in this case, so we have 2, 3, etc. up to square root of 100 is equal to 10. So we need to check only 9 divisions. Therefore, this is a much lower number compared to the previous technique. We will see an example. Question is the following. Check if 1601 is a prime. So according to the technique that we just now described, we have to see if 1601 has a prime divisor or not, but within which range? 601 in the range 2 to square root of 1601, and if you take the integer part of this is going to be equal to 40. So we need to just try to divide the number 1601 with all primes in the range 2 to 40. Therefore, we have to see what is um, 2 divides 1601. That's the first question, and answer is, because it's not even, this is no, this is wrong. Now, what about 3? 3 divides 1601. Because we can, of course, see that if 3 divides 1601, then 1601, the sum of digits in that has to be a multiple of 3. Here it is 6 plus 1 plus 1. It is not a multiple of 3, therefore this is not true. Now 5 divides 1601, that's also false. This is also not true. What about 7? If we try to divide it with 7, we can see that 7 divides 1601. So this is 14. After that 20, 61, and this is not true. After that we have to see if 11 divides 1601. Now if we keep on doing like this, we have to go up to if 37, that is the last number we have to check. 37 divides 1601, and we will see in all these that none of these things are going to be true. Therefore, we will get that no prime in the range 2 to square root of 1601, which is equal to approximately 40. No prime in the range 2 to 40 divides this 1601. Therefore, 1601 has no factor, no prime factor in the range 2 to 40. Therefore, 1601 cannot have any factor also in that range. So what we see is 1601 is a prime number. 1601 has no prime factors in 2 to 40. Therefore, 1601 is a prime. This is the conclusion we have.